Psalm 51, verse 17 is kind of one of the center parts of that confession. For the sacrifices of God, how many can finish that? The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. These, O God, that you will not despise. For the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. For he has told you, O man, what is good. And what doth the Lord require of you, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. For the sacrifice of God is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, Father, you will not despise. Indeed, far from despising that heart. This kind of heart then, this kind of heart that would draw us to an altar. I don't see so much in healing. I don't see that spirit as people come for something to the altar there. But I see that spirit all the time when people come and kneel there and they lay bare the things of their heart and they open up and sometimes for needs, but it doesn't always stay there. It goes deeper than that. This kind of heart, then, this broken and contrite heart, free of denial, free of self-confidence, free of self-will, free of self-anything. It's not about me. How many of you learn that the movement of God in this world is not really about you? It's about them. It's always about the other. He'll move in you and he'll speak to you to get you to love them and to get you to be Christ to them and to get you to Neil Diamond. You got two good hands. One is for reaching up here and the other is for reaching down there. It's always about loving your brother. Now, he'll work in us and he'll break us. And this contrite heart and these stones and this season of Lent, that's what it's for. That's what you get for doing it. If that appeals to your heart, yeah, I want that. You're not doing that from the flesh. Ain't nobody wants that and those things in the flesh. But if your heart yearns for that, and you say the amen to that, oh my word, that's grace. God has already touched you. He's already ministered to you. That's what the Spirit does. Draws us to those times and to those places. It's a heart free of all those things. It's a heart broken down. Broken down in context here with basically the things I've done with my sins, my silly things. For a heart broken down and contrite, it'd be hard for a lot of us to define what contrite means. It means to be remorseful. That's a feeling thing. I hurt because of some of the wrong things I do. Remorseful. It means to be regretful. That's a mental thing. Oh, I regret stealing that steak from the meat market at Edwards. I ordered it and she put the tag on it for how much. And I turned around and just slid it into my pocket and walked out. I shouldn't have enjoyed eating it as much as I did. Gosh, I shouldn't have done that. Things we regret that we hadn't done at all. It's apologetic. To be contrite is that coming and I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this. I wish I hadn't. And we say to God, and hopefully if we've grown in our life, we go and we say it to the other that we've wounded. That's a present thing. It's a thing I'm doing right now as I feel apologetic. And then there's the repentance part. Contrition means remorse, to feel regret, kind of a mental thing as we look back at our past. To be apologetic is a very real thing now, and to be repentant. That's the broken down thing. Sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, a broken down thing to where we're ready, finally ready to give up. We're finally ready to, oh God, it hurts me and I wish I hadn't done it. God, and I'm so sorry I did it. And Father, take it away. I give it to you, God. Take it away. I don't want to do it anymore. I did it this week. I picked it up again, Father, and you told me to put it down, but Father, I'm here. Take it away. That's where persistent comes in, to keep coming and keep coming and keep asking. Do that 10 times and a certain thing will change in you about that thing you come to pray for. Do that 30 times and that thing will probably have changed 2 or 3 times in those things of how you come and you pray for that, and the way that different things will come to you as you're doing that, and the devil will accuse you saying, oh, you're stupid. Don't come back to this thing. Don't keep doing it. It doesn't do any good. Your own conscience, your own false conscience will beat you up, because here you are asking again, and you've been so weak in the past, and you've dishonored Christ so many times. You just keep doing that thing, and you'll fight through all those things, and you'll get beyond those things, and after more times to this cross. And maybe that's over your whole spiritual life. Oh, those things are below you now, and you're seeing from higher ground, and you're broken, and you just want to be persistent. You don't even want to be persistent. You just want to come and do whatever God has been doing with you here for all those times. It gets to be that sweet. It gets to be something you miss. It's like exercise. You don't want to do it, and you don't want to do it. I'm preaching to myself here. But after you've done it for a while, man, it makes you feel good, and you want to keep doing it. You'll suffer to do it. So that's that kind of heart. Our motives are laid bare with that kind of heart. That's part of the work as we... There's this place in Hannah's beautiful book, Hind's Feet on High Places, Dear Feet on High Places, what Hind's mean. And I told you last week about the stones she picked up, the rough stones at all those places that God ministered to her. Some she made an altar, some the altar was provided for her. And there's a place in the book to where she's got her pouch of stones. And I believe she's got 10 stones at that time. And she's in a cave, and it's this terrible storm, and it doesn't look like they're going to survive, and it's the worst place she's been. And it's scaring her to death, and she opens her pouch, and she pours those 10 stones into her hands. And the thought in her mind is, what good are these? What good are these? What have they done for me? Did God really speak to me? What good are these rocks? And she contemplates throwing them away. She contemplates stopping. That's what that is. Oh God, you've given me these promises, but they're nothing. This is too hard. They're just nothing to me. And she goes through each of those stones. And she knows which one she picked up where. And the first one she picked up at a pool, one of the first places she came to as the shepherd had called her to lead her up to her high places. And the first one happened beside that pool to where she could look into it and she could see her countenance. Much afraid, has a crooked mouth and a droopy eye. And she walks with a bad leg, a limp, slows her progress. Oh, what a metaphor for some that God calls to the high places. And she sees that, and she remembers her family, the stock she came from, the fearlings and the cravenness of some of those people, and the life she lived among them. And she looks into this pool and sees her countenance. And she sees 2 weeds there. And the shepherd speaks the first words to her about her journey that he ever spoke to her before there. He says, I will make you to walk, to leap upon your high places. I will give you deer's feet. And life will be there. Kind of like abundant life kind of a thing. And she sees a weed off to the side, and she sees this little flower coming up, daisy or buttercup thing. I don't know what kind it is. And the shepherd says she's free to choose which one of those she wants. One is the weed of bitterness and judgment. The other one is the flower of acceptance with joy. Bitterness, of course, we know where that would lead. And she chooses, she's looking in a pool and she sees her crooked face and she knows her bad leg and how she was born and whom she was born into and the life she had lived, unfair. And she has, do I choose bitterness? Do I choose acceptance with joy? And she chose acceptance with joy. For this, for this, and for this, and for her place she was born to, whatever she suffered there. Instead of bitterness for that, she chose acceptance with joy. Good choice? Here I am. This is what I am. God, I'm hurt. I'm crippled. I'm broken. But I'll believe you. You've told me you're going to make my feet like hinds' feet and that I will walk and leap upon my high places. My leg doesn't work, Lord. That's one reason I have this set for you, is that picture would touch your heart. I may read that to you and cut out half of what I've got here. And don't you know, she wouldn't throw those rocks away because they had become too precious to her, too truthful. So what she dealt with at those places was truthful and costly to her. And each time a different piece of her flesh was cut away, as the scriptures talks about that double-edged sword and what it does. Too precious to leave behind. Because as hard as those places were, she knew that the shepherd was there too, or he was close by watching. And she didn't want to throw it away. It was sweet to her. In God's upside-down kingdom, upside down in our perspective, of course, confessions and sacrifices of broken lives and humility and contrition and release and forgiveness and service with joy from our heart, That's what God's waiting for. He sees those things be birthed in us, and that's what he's been waiting for. And he touches us, and that goes so deeply that we get to a place where we're unable not to love. We're unable not to want to do justly. We're unable not to want to have mercy flow through us every single day to every single person. We're unable to stand and shake our fist at God and say, why is this such a terrible day? Why do these things keep happening and happening and happening to me? God touches our heart. And it doesn't matter, because we've looked in the pool and we've chosen right now, okay, I will accept this. Not begrudgingly, I will accept this, Father, with joy. And I'll go on, and it's okay, and it's okay. Here's the other stones up here. I don't have jewels and precious stones and sapphire and those kind of things, but I polish stones between these rough ones and those, between things that will happen on this side of the cross to you and the burdens you will bear and the cleansing and the hard things and the things you will give up and you will lay on that altar for God to touch, the rough places. And then on the other side of that altar, after you've carried your cross across it, there's jewels there. This, I believe, is when those rocks turn to jewels. I think sometimes it's probably a slow polishing, but I'm thinking when this happens in us, that when the values or the virtues or the ways of God in the hearts of men and the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve, the way of his kingdom, when those values, do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with thy God, and love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and body, love your neighbor, when those things become important to you, when those things go beyond importance and become valuable to you, and you see them and you clutch them to your bosom, you know these are true, and you desire them. You hunger for them. You thirst for that kind of righteousness in your life. And that gets to a place to where you'd rather have that than life itself. Acceptance with joy of what I have now, God, but only make me act justly and love mercy and walk humbly with my God, no matter what. When they get to that place in you, that valuable enough to where they become the most important part of how you live your life, I think at that moment, those stones are changed into those jewels. Because God's changed your heart. What before was distasteful to you, what before was too hard for you ever to contemplate doing, to loving or forgiving or showing mercy or to want justice for this person instead of your vengeance for what they did. Impossible for you. To get to that place, you read here and go, oh God, I've been wrong. I want what you want so bad. I think that stone is changed, or at least it's way on its way to being changed. Because your heart's changed. Grace has touched you, and you're a different person than you ever used to be. Because within our hearts, when those things happen, when those values and the treasures that we see and that we clutch to our bosom, when those things are treasures that start to be things of the kingdom, that don't rust and all of that picture that Jesus says, that wait yonder for us, for some of us, when those become our treasures and we really can accept all of this junk with the flower of acceptance with joy instead of the weed of bitterness or judgment or how comes or unfair. Within our hearts, in that time, our sufferings and our troubles and our afflictions and our hard places and our questions and doubts and all of those things are distilled into something different. I think I saw on the Amazon that you could buy a still now. It had a big pot, and I guess that's where you'd put the roughage, the corn or whatever you're doing. You boil it and everything, and it had the tube that went up. Went over to a smaller pot, and so it got vaporized, and it went up, and it didn't congeal. What's the word when vapor turns back into liquid? Condense. I knew it. Just didn't know I knew it. It comes into this and it condenses again, and there's a fire under this one, and it comes over and it goes into another one. That's where all the copper tubing is wrapped around, and it gets to the bottom and it's liquid again and it's pure. Started as this, roughage, and ended up as this, Pepsi-Cola. Can't say moonshine, can I? But whatever it is, it's 100 proof. It's the good stuff. All of that stuff we go through, that gets changed and distilled through, purified in the earth 7 times as silver is. And it gets distilled into, on the other side of the cross, on the other side of our cross sometimes as we carry it into the place of redemption. It gets turned, distilled down into treasures. And it gets changed into these hard things. Jewels are beautiful, but they're still hard. And it becomes the very best gift that we could offer to Christ. A broken and contrite spirit, oh God, you don't, oh sure you don't despise it, but that's what you've been waiting for, God, here it is. Those things that, remember the museum of heaven? Those things that God showed up and he delivered you and he touched you and there was the healing and there was work carried on that the atonement on the cross purchased for us and faith and those kind of things and miracles happen. One of those rooms is going to be full of those kind of folks. The very best thing they offered, look at what he did for me. And the other room, remember the other room, those are the ones where Paul is going to be on display for all eons to show the manifold grace of God. The other room is where God would say to us, my grace is sufficient for you. God, look at what, this is what I am. You know what God said to her there? My grace is sufficient for you. And she picked up her first stone. And when she's sorting her bag in that cave, no, I got to keep that. And she returns it. You want to keep those hard places, I believe, because they'll be changed into something. I'd said to myself, self, you need to look back and see just what those stones meant to her, just what they were. A couple of weeks I've been saying that. This morning I had time, so I did that. And I had some other things to share with you, like why in the world would we go through all this stuff? And this says it better. So the scene is she's in her cave. It's terrible outside. She's got all of her stones, holding them in her hands. Cold hands, shaking hands, wondering what good are they. And Hannah says in her beautiful words, much afraid, she looked at that little pile of stones in her lap and she asked herself dully, shall I throw them away? Were they not all worthless promises which he gave me on the way up here? And then with icy fingers, she picked up the first stone and repeated the first words that he had spoken to her beside the pool. I will make thy feet like hinds' feet, and I will set thee upon thy high places. And she held the stone in her hand for a long time, and then she said, I have not received hinds' feet, but I am on higher places than ever I imagined possible. And if I die up here, what does it matter? I will not throw this stone away. The very first stone is what it was changing into, still rough stone. She put the stone back in the bag and picked up the next and repeated, what I do thou knowest not, but thou shalt know hereafter. And she gave a little sob and said, half at least of this is true. And who knows whether the other half is true or not, but I will not throw it away. See what's happening here? The shepherd spoke word to her. And more than the rock here, understand that this is the word he spoke to her, the promise he gave to her. Half of it's true. I'm on some high ground here and I'm scared, but I still don't have hinds' feet. She couldn't throw that away. Picking up the third stone, she quoted, this is not unto death, but for the glory of God. It's not about you, is it? The glory of God. Not unto death, she repeated, even though he says, offer the promise as a burnt offering. But she dropped the stone back into the bag and took up the fourth. Bread corn is bruised, but no one crushes it forever. It's from Isaiah 28:28. She said, I cannot part with that. With what he told her back at that place, you'd have to read the book for that. She replaced it in the bag and she took up the fifth stone. Can I not do with you as the potter, says the Lord? Can I not mold you? Do with you as the potter in this life that I've given you to live? Cannot I do with you as I want? Yes, she said. And she put the stone back in her bag. Did I bring my bag? I did not bring it. Taking the sixth stone, she repeated, O thou afflicted one, tossed with tempest and not comforted, behold, I will lay thy stones with fair colors. Oh, that was beautiful. Fair colors. Make them things of beauty. O thou afflicted one, tossed in the storm, coming against your house, that Jesus talks about, and not comforted, behold, I will lay thy stones with fair colors, and they would be beautiful things. How could I part with that? She asked herself, and she put that in her bag with the others. And she took up the seventh. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow me. Shall I throw this one away? She asked herself. Have I really heard his voice, or have I just been deceiving myself all of this time? And as she thought of his face when he had gave her that promise, she replaced it in the bag, saying, I will keep it. How can I let it go? It's precious to her. And then she picked up the eighth. How shalt thou see what I will do? Now thou shalt see what I will do. Remembering the precipice which had seemed so terrifying, impossible, and how he had brought her to the top, she put that stone with the others. Now shalt thou see what I will do. Terribly impossible. Those words jumped out at me. I've been with folks standing at the bottom of a mountain, looking at things so terribly impossible for the human heart to bear or comprehend, let alone overcome, let alone become a thing to where they would experience God through and get to the top and see that stone and not want to throw it away. Some of you have been there. Some of you have been there. The ninth stone, God is not a man that he should lie. Hath he said, and shall not he do? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good? For a long time, she sat trembling with that stone in her hand. But in the end, she says, I have already given the only answer possible when I told him, if thou canst do a thing, then thou mayest deceive me. If thou can't fulfill thy word, if this is all just made up, all just in my head, God, that's okay. You can deceive me with it. And I'll still follow you. My word. That ninth stone was a hard one. If thou canst, thou may deceive me. That's when we promise God something. That's that heart with no self-confidence, no self-will, no self-anything. That's that heart that can promise, that can receive a promise from God and says, Lord, if you fulfill it, oh, that would be great. God, if you took my crooked mouth, my bad leg away from me, oh, that would be beautiful. But Lord, you don't have to do that. You're just enough, Jesus. Jesus is enough. That's all I want. Shepherd, you are enough. I will just follow you no matter what I have to go through. You can lead me on. You could lie to me. I don't care. I love you and I will follow you. No strings attached. And then she dropped the icy, cold little pebble into the bag, and she took up the 10th. Thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, This is the way, walk ye in it. And when ye turn to the left hand, and when ye turn to the right. And at that the shepherd, and at that she shuddered rather, but after a while added, Thou hast a little strength, and hast not denied my name. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man would take thy crown. It's from the Revelation. Hold that fast, that no man would take thy crown. And returning the 10th stone to the bag, after a long pause, she picked up an ugly little stone lying on the floor of that cave and dropped it in beside the other 10, saying, Though he slay me, yet will I serve him. Been through all this, shown me all these things. That's what Job got to. You see, his past was like that. And when the worst things happen, things we can't even imagine, that's when he uttered, Yet though thou slay me, yet will I serve thee. And tying up the little bag, she said, Though everything in the world should tell me that they are worthless, yet I cannot part with them. And she put the bag back into her bosom. You ever been there? Though everything, you get to those times, everything says this is worthless. It's too hard. It's unbelievable. But you can't let them go. Again and again, you're pulled back into Christ's presence. Again and again, you feel them in your heart, and you cannot walk away. You cannot deny or curse Christ or leave off that sense that there is truth here, and this is for me, and God loves me in spite of. And that becomes precious to you. It will become precious to you. For some of those things, you'll make trips to the altar for years and years and years and years and years. And it is in those trips, I guess, for some of those stones that they get polished.